Hello, everyone. I am Kim with Abundant Life Tarot, and I thank you all for joining me. Do you want to hear some excerpts from my Depth Year Journal from 2020? If so, stay tuned. Okay, so I'm reading excerpts from my Depth Year Journal, and check out part 1 if you haven't already, where I kind of give an intro and a rundown of how my 2020 went with regards to my depth year. And now we're just reading excerpts, and I'm just cutting it off at natural points where I feel called to, because I have wrote a lot and I'm still writing. I have journaled even as of a couple of days ago. It is March 10th, 2021. March 10th, 2021 that I'm recording this video, and I have entries as soon as a couple of days ago, but I won't read anything that has occurred in 2021 because I want to keep this to 2020, and then we'll move forward as necessary. So June 14, 2020, I wrote, I bought the business class tarot today to use for my upcoming live readings or career readings. It violates my depth year, but June represents my last low buy part of the year, so I am not going to beat myself up over this purchase. Okay. Oh, I also wrote, I am happily not buying any decks in solidarity with others in my community who will refrain from purchasing decks from big business. This is to raise awareness to the fact they have done little to help Black lives or even their artists. I am glad I am in this depth year, as it is helping me in so many different ways. Financially, emotionally, I put racially and physically and mentally. Wow. Okay, so the business class tarot. I do have that deck. I think it's on the boat to come to me. It's been on the boat forever, guys. Oh my gosh. But sometimes with my depth year, I was like called to violate it, as I would call it, make a violation against my depth year. And some folks laughed at me, but it's true. It was a violation because it violated my rules. But I did give a little more latitude if I knew I was going to be using the deck professionally in my professional readings. Did I use it as much as I thought I would? No. I ended up using it a few times, but that was better than some of my other decks, I'll say that. But hopefully when it finally arrives, I will really get to know it. It's a cool deck, and I'm happy I have it, actually. As someone who's been in the career world for her whole adult life, I appreciate it. But yeah, it didn't quite make the cut to come on the plane with me, but it did make the cut to come and be shipped immediately versus some of my decks that are just being stored at my parents' house until I can get back there and get them. All right, let's see what else I decided to talk about. I'll just read some excerpts. It says, I don't know how this was written June 19, 2020 on Juneteenth, which is, at least in the United States, it's an informal holiday commemorating the date of the last slaves being freed, I believe in Texas, the state of Texas. And they were the last ones to be notified that they were actually free and had been free for some time, like a couple of years, I think. And so Juneteenth became this informal holiday that we all celebrated. In California, my home state in the United States, the governor actually, Governor Newsom, actually made that an official holiday of the state, and I was happy about that in 2020. Let's see. So I talk about attending a rally on Juneteenth with my kids, with my middle and youngest child, and it was so cool. I have a picture, I think, on Instagram of that time. And then I go on to talk about, well, I mean, if I'm going to be honest, so let me just read it. It says, I decided to post a video revealing my disdain for a deck creator for the Gollywog Oracle and implore people to research their decks before purchasing. And I think it is important I talk about it, not about the Gollywog, whatever, but the importance of researching the deck creators, the artists, the decks that you are fawning over. Because oftentimes when you just do a quick Google search or a quick social media search, you will find that some of these people have beliefs that are not in alignment with yours. And you're now unwittingly purchasing decks that support people that you may not have wanted to support it. And then maybe you don't care at the end of the day. And there were a few instances in my life with collecting decks that I'm like, that doesn't really bother me that much. I'm going to go ahead and get this deck anyway. I'm called to get this deck. There are times when that happens, but there's some things that I'm like, no, this is where I draw the freaking line. So I want to also put in a quick plug on my free course that I offer on Abundant Life Tarot Academy at my website, abundantlifetarot.com, choosing your next deck, curating your collection, and I even have an upcoming lecture, Zoom lecture that I'm going to do about the spirituality of collecting decks, the morality also of collecting decks, and ways that you can preserve your morality surrounding collecting decks. Okay? But I think that's important to mention. And at first I hesitated on even including that excerpt, but now I see why I did. And then I wrote in another paragraph, I don't know how I really feel about deck collecting anymore. I love my decks, but now I feel like I may have some in my collection that are created by crummy people. Sad, sad, sad. All around. I wrote that. Anyways, it feels good to, let's see, what did I say? Say that, I said, I can't understand my own handwriting. Anyways, it feels good to say that on YouTube. I want people to feel good about their collection. And I do. And the one quick, easy tip is to, before you make a purchase, Google who you are purchasing from. Google about that deck. What is really the intent behind that deck? What is the intent behind the creator? Who are you actually supporting? Now, some people are completely okay with supporting folk who, don't have the same belief systems. And I can be one of those people. It depends, right? It's just all depends. But there's some things that are like deal breakers for me. And I just want to give a tip to those who are new to collecting or even not so new, to just remember to Google and do social media searches on your creators and your artists of your decks so that so you don't get any nasty surprises. I hate nasty surprises where I supported a deck, paid for a deck's in my collection, I'm even maybe using this deck, and then it turns out that the person's pretty freaking crummy. Just saying. All right, let's see. June 21st, 2020, I made another deck this time called One with the Earth Oracle. So I was intuitively called, after discussions with my ancestors, to create some decks out of stock images and my intuition on what guide words that needed to be on these cards. I created these decks and now I use them a lot. And it actually shifted the way that I collect decks, period. Me creating my own oracle decks on makeplayingcards.com, and one of my friends who makes tarot decks, you know, in a similar fashion on makeplayingcards.com. It changed the way that I collect decks. Like, first of all, it kind of like me making a deck on makeplayingcards.com helped me to comply with my rules of not purchasing new decks. I'm creating decks. I'm creating oracle decks. But then I had a deeper connection with these decks than ever before. And these are the decks now that I really use all the time in my client readings. And in readings for myself, of course, but in my client readings, more so than any other decks I purchase. And I purchase a lot of oracle decks. So I mention this because it had a profound, that me taking the time to pick out images, think about keywords, and now I'm writing a guidebook for one of the decks that I created. It just takes it takes to a whole nother level. And I have the most like amazing readings with these decks. So yeah, I talk about that. I think that's why I highlighted that. So June 24th, 2020, I say, I have decided I want to read tarot and teach tarot full time. Wei, that's my husband, it is short for Wayman. Wei seems to understand. We both want to make sure this is, I think I put, is it doable? God, I can't understand my handwriting. But I can no longer, okay. Oh, viable. Goodness gracious, I can't even understand my handwriting because folks say, you write like a doctor. Scribble scrabble. It's not scribble. I think it's pretty, but it's just loopity-loop. Part cursive, part like, part cursive, part, God, I can't think of like the regular one. It's just, oh my God, the standard. Oh my God, I'm drawing a blank. But it's hard to understand. But I put, we both want to make sure this is viable, but I can no longer half-ass give to my business. I made a new deck, one with the Earth Oracle. Each of my decks were specifically divinely guided to, what? I was divinely guided to create? I don't even know what I wrote there. Now I'm receiving, and then I put, now I'm receiving messages from my ancestry through these decks, and it's true. I got excited about, on June 30th, about unboxing the Afro Tarot, and it's everything I hoped it would be, is something I wrote here. Let's see. July 15th, 2020, I wrote, it has been a while. I have not bought any decks since the Afro Tarot. So June 24th, 2020, and then July 15th was when I put this entry in. And then I decided to wait on the next World Tarot. I do plan to get the newest Roots and Wings Oracle and gift or sell the edition I currently have, the first edition I had. And I did do that. I gave it to a dear friend who also collects decks. Okay, I talk about having a few decks on my wish list. Okay, for time's sake, I'm just going to keep moving. July 23rd, 2020, I wrote, I'm so excited. Abundant Life Tarot Academy's first course launch. And, oh look, 8 people registered so far. And I think now we're at 96 folks who've registered. Good for you. And so all of my hard work, dedication has paid off, and I love, and I put that in capital words, love my course. And then I put, the depth year was what really inspired this course, and I hope it helps people find their way back to wholeness with their deck collections. That's my simple mission for this free course offering. My depth year has blessed me in so many ways. Life has gotten more hectic as my attention shifted away from finding new decks to creating content for my courses. This is my future. I'm creating, and my depth year was, what is this? I don't know what I wrote. Who knows what I wrote? I don't know. We're moving on. I can't even understand it. I would show you, but I'm too embarrassed. Let's see. Oh, this is fun. July 29, 2020. I go back and forth on whether to purchase a Tarot de Marseille Solobushka deck for educational purposes. So in making my course, I realized I was like, I have none of those ancient decks per se in my collection. And should I get those? Should being like a note to self, like I hate the word should, because it's like, no, I shouldn't. But I was worried about that. Like, should I have those in my course? And I know I'm not going to want to use them because I've tried to use them in the past. Didn't really enjoy them. I'm not aesthetically called to use them. But if I just bought them for, the course's sake, should I do that? I can tell you I didn't do that. Yeah. So I didn't do it. And then on July 30th, I wrote, I finished a book, finally. Finding Soul on the Path, or Orisa, O-R-I-S-A, I should say. And then I put about how I was going to wait on purchasing the Desta Onyx. And I talked about the Desta Onyx deck a few times in this deck. I'm not going to bore you with all of that for time's sake. I ended up being gifted that. You probably saw that on the channel if you are a viewer, a regular viewer. A dear person, a lover, gifted me the deck. And it's so funny because she may be tickled that I talked about it a lot. I actually talked about this entry, which was on July 30th. I think I talked about it before in the earlier entries. August 3rd, I talk about it. Let me see. Talk about August 5th. It's heavy on my mind, but I kept saying, no, you don't need it. I did a spread that told me it's gonna be one of those decks that you're gonna have to take your time with. And I was like, well, I'm super busy now. I don't really need it. And then lo and behold, I ended up receiving it as a gift. Okay. Let's see what. Keep moving on. August 13th, 2020, I wrote, I realize I don't have any new decks on the way, other than the Bonestone and Stories, which is an Oracle deck that I wrote one of the guidebook entries to. So I only had those two pending at the time. I almost ordered Pam's Vintage Tarot bridge-sized deck and stopped short for two reasons. No buy depth year. So at this point I had told myself from June to December, I'm not buying any new decks. And no keywords on the deck. That bothered me for some reason. I will still add it to my wish list, but refrain from purchasing it. I'm loving that people are loving my new course. I hope people are loving it all the way through. I got my first course review. Thank you. You know who you are, who left me a course review. And I talked about that review. Let's see what else we have. So on this side, August 16th. All right, I'm going to read this one and then we'll pause because I like to keep these at 20 minutes if I can. I went to Kaiser Roseville today. Kaiser is a huge medical insurance company / medical facilities, particularly in the West Coast, but in a few other parts of the country. So I have to give you that background. So I said, I went to Kaiser Roseville. Roseville is the next town over from us. For an INR blood draw, a Sunday. INR, so for those who don't know, in 2013, when I was 33 years old, I experienced a blood clot to the lung, which is called a pulmonary embolism. And the old idea of how to treat that or handle that was to keep me on blood thinners for the rest of my life. And so what that meant was every so often I had to go in and get my blood checked. If it dipped below, my INR levels dipped below anywhere from a range of 2 to 3, like if it was 1.8, I had to go in for more frequent testing, blood work, just making sure that I stay on course so that the blood thinners would be thin, to keep my blood thin so blood clots wouldn't happen. I'm happy to report now I am no longer on blood thinners, but that's another day. We'll talk about that later. But I'm just going to paraphrase here. There is a cute little metaphysical store that I've gone to for years that's right near the medical facility, and I would treat myself after doing blood work sometimes it could be every 2 weeks on average, to it could be, if I've been a good girl and everything's working out, every month, every 6 weeks if I'm really good. But sometimes if I'm stressed and not taking care of myself, it can be every week to 2 weeks. It could be just craziness. But there was a metaphysical shop there, and I would always go there to look and see if there was new decks added, new crystals. And so that's what I'm talking about here. And it's called Everlasting Gifts in Roseville. So on August 16th, I marveled at myself in this journal entry of, I did not buy a deck or crystal. I got 2 peacock feathers and an onyx cross for my Lagoon altar. And actually, I actually have both, but I'm not gonna, they're under my wand. So here's that one. Here's one of the crosses I ended up getting from there. This is a white onyx cross, just to you there. So I did break down and get that on August 16th. I talked more about me navigating. I'm not going to bore you guys with that. Me navigating how I'm going to talk to my employer about my plans of downsizing my life, or I was stressed out. My daughter was in a virtual school and not really thriving as many kids are experiencing. And she even told me she's just not motivated. And she's 9 years old and she's telling me this. And it made me so sad. And I just felt like I wasn't showing up in my best light, my best way, in any of the areas in my life. And it was a low point for me, I realized, as I started looking at the journal entries. Let me see what else. I started, in 2020, I also started doing more live Zoom reading sessions because of my professional background as an analyst, and before that as an adjuster, a claims adjuster for many years. I know that corporate life, so I know that Zoom kind of life, and it worked out where I was able to do like group and couples sessions through Zoom. I do one-on-one sessions through Zoom as well, but it was an exciting time because the pandemic caused folks to think outside of the box on how they could celebrate or how they could work with each other, and also have a reader who helps facilitate that. And so I talk about that as well. This is a nice stopping point. This is going to end up being multiple multiple videos I see, which is fine. Because I want to take my time and explain my depth year progress with you guys and how that's going, and be honest with you, so that way you kind of know what to expect, but also don't beat yourself up, because you can say, oh, well, Kim was going through some things and she ended up buying a deck. That's not what I'm trying to say, but you get what I mean. All right, guys, we'll wrap up here. I'm going to take a little break, go use the restroom, come back and do some more reading. All right, thank you so much for watching, and please continue to part 3 of my Depth Year 2020 update.